So as we progress into the conversation on the future of digital and open source, it's a delight, no less, to bring to the stage an old friend. Now, what you're going to find is for the next period of time, I am going to introduce you to people who I consider friends. It's a bit like being in my kitchen on a Friday night, except mostly they're dialing in digitally. And I hope you realize that we have the tea and the biscuits here for them to relax and have that Friday night conversation with you. Because it's important to us. She used the term democratize. This conference is about democratizing technology. It's why the ticket price is what it is. It's why we have free tickets for colleagues between jobs, for students, and for community contributors. And before I sort of formally bring Jono to the stage, and I will mention this to you again before the end of the plenaries, we have government departments here this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. And what those government departments are going to do is direct consultation with you. This is your chance to tell those government departments what open source is. So not coming through people like me who do the policy work on your behalf, your direct opportunity to communicate with those departments. Because unlike some, what they're trying to do is they are trying to understand what open source is, how it works, and what it means. So I will mention this again at the end of the plenaries, and I'll talk to you about it again tomorrow. But between 1 and 3 this afternoon, down in the AI policy zone, you're going to have the opportunity to talk direct to those government departments. And I think as Chi leaves us, it's important for you to know that the UK government departments are trying to listen to you. So lecture over. It's a pleasure to bring to the stage a very old friend. I've known Jono since the beginning of 2008 when I moved to Canonical in my first open source role. And if I hadn't fallen in love with Ubuntu and the open source community at the beginning of 2008, none of this would be happening now. I owe my whole open source engagement and collaboration to the people who were around me and taught me open source and Ubuntu. And Jono Bacon is a force of nature. He is somebody who's brought together community again and again for the longest of time. He'll tell you his own stories about how he got into open source, and he'll tell you about the company that he is now running, encouraging others to build community. So, with no further ado, can we welcome to the stage Jono Bacon.
Wow. What a song to come on to. That's incredible. How y'all doing? Come on, a little louder. How's everyone doing? There we go. All right. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's just mind-blowing what the OpenUK has achieved in all the work that's kind of going on. I wish I could have come last year. This is my first time, and it's just amazing. So put your hands together for everybody who put this event together. It's so impressive. Now, Amanda, you won't be surprised, gave me very explicit instructions when I came here. She said, I want you to get people excited about open source and community and kind of set the stage for the event, right? So I'm your hype guy today here at the event. And I think we should start out with this, which is open source is running the world, right? I mean, it's incredible to see what's happened over the course of the last 20-odd years. And there are so many different examples of this, right? We've seen the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the Linux Foundation, Sneak, Docker, AWS, Ubuntu. Where are the AWS crew? They're in here somewhere? There we go. There are so many examples of this happening all over the world. And what I love about this is that open source is not really just about building code. It's about teaching people how to technically collaborate, whether it's writing code or documentation or translations or whatever else. And that's had a knock-on effect in places like documenting human knowledge with Wikipedia. We've seen the bridging of bits and atoms with the Maker Revolution. We've seen the democratization of funding with crowdfunding. There are countless examples all over the world, but I don't care about any of that stuff today. I'm not interested in talking about that. That's really cool. What I want to talk about is what is the root cause of why this happens? Human beings build open source. Human beings update Wikipedia. Human beings do crowdfunding and everything else. But what is the root cause that makes this happen? Because if we can figure that out, then we can take open source to the parts of the world where we're not dominating, okay? And I think that if you look at the central artery that goes into what makes all of this possible, is that fundamentally, human beings are good. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, well, hang on a second, Jono, there's wars going on, and there's famine, and people are being assholes to each other on the internet. Yeah, I'm not saying all human beings are good, and there are some human beings who are objectively terrible people. One of them is one of my best friends who's coming down to London tonight. Stuart Langridge, you know who he is. But I think in my 44 years on this planet, the vast, vast majority of people I've ever met have been good people. And good people form together into communities, because we're a social species. This room is an example of one community, but then we subdivide into smaller communities, and we focus on specific problems and issues that we're really excited and passionate about. And all of these things that I talked about earlier on are examples of those communities. And these are the big standout ones, but there are thousands and thousands of these communities all over the world. And this is what I love about open source, is anyone with a cool idea can start something, right? And fundamentally why this works is because a community is a network of minds. If you think about this room, I don't know how many of you are in here, there's a lot of you. Every single brain in this room has got different experience. We look at the world through a different lens. We've tried things that have worked, we've tried things that haven't worked. We all look at things slightly differently. And when we get all of that out into the open, into a shared space where we can consume and share each other's wisdom and experience, that's when we have this ultimate leverage, where we go bigger and better than ever before. This is what I think is so powerful about this. It reminds me of something that Seth Godin, who's a really great author, wrote. And he said, when you're in service of other people's success, good things happen to you. And this is something that I wish I knew this earlier on in my career, but this is how people become successful in their careers. Every single person I know who has been successful, and many of you in this room are examples. In fact, Nithya is a perfect example of this. Nithya has just invested in so many other people's success over the course of her career. She's been generous with her time, with her wisdom, with her empathy. And she's incredibly successful because of this. And there are many, many examples of this. And this is, I think, at the center of what makes open source so special. And this isn't some like unicorns and rainbows, waffly nonsense that you'd read on Reddit, right? Slashdata surveyed about 18,000 developers a couple of years ago. And they said, where do you like to go and learn? The top 3 answers here were all community-centric, open source community, social media, community websites, and forums. It clearly works, right? And I think when we get down to that root cause, outside of human beings generally being good people, the reason why open source is so impactful is because it empowers the individual. It's all about focusing on the individual, right? Is that when you've got one person, they've got a certain level of life experience and a certain level of skill and a certain level of resources available, open source enables people to make the very best of that. Do you remember years ago, if you wanted to get a job, you needed experience to get a job. But you couldn't get a job without experience. That's not a problem in open source. You just go and start learning and start doing something, and before you know it, you're on your pathway. But to me, what's so powerful about this is that when you empower the individual, that then inspires and empowers other individuals. And I think the UK open source community is a perfect example of this. Over the course of the next couple of days, we're all going to talk about certain people who have been impactful in our lives. Amanda is a perfect example of this. The work that she's been doing here has inspired and influenced other people to do great work, and then it has that domino effect. So to me, this is what's especially powerful about this. And the UK, I think, takes this in a particularly interesting, I think there's something really grounding about this. I've been living in California for 15 years now. And I got my teeth bleached, and didn't go with a hair transplant. That was a bridge too far. But there's something about this country and about the United Kingdom where there's a really kind of pragmatic, down-to-earth, empathetic approach to how we share and how we learn. And I was saying to Amanda last night, one of the things I love about this, it reminds me of growing up in open source when I got started. I just think it's really neat. We do it differently over here. And one example of the impact on an individual is myself. Right? I did not grow up in the Silicon Valley jet set. No one who I'm related to went to university. I grew up in a council house in Northallerton, North Yorkshire. We didn't really have a lot when I was younger. My mum was a stay-at-home mum. My dad was a welder. But I got interested in computers. And this was kind of, early 90s kind of time. And I just became very interested in this. And I was not a particularly gifted student, 2 Ds and a C. My A-levels, 2 Ds, an E, and an N. Like an Ed is where you spell your name wrong in the exam paper. Not very gifted at all. But then, oh, I'll skip over that, that's not important. Then, actually, look at this. Look how condescending this PE review is from my teacher. Reasonably well. Yeah, not good. I was going to skip over that. When I was 19, my brother came to stay with us for a couple of weeks, my brother Simon. He introduced me to Linux. It was 1998, and I just fell in love with it. I worked in a bookshop at the time, and I went and bought this book. Did anyone ever read this book, Slackware Unleashed? How many old fogies are there in the room? Over there, yeah, a couple of old fogies, all right. And it completely changed. It was just a light bulb went off for me. I was so excited about what I was reading here. And it triggered a chain effect. I started a community called Linux UK, started getting to know other people in the UK. That then led to contributing to the KDE project and doing booths and writing some software here and there. I got drunk in a bar with two guys who started Linux Format magazine and convinced them to write so I could write an article. That then led to writing more articles, and my first job was writing for magazines. Then I wrote an article about a place called Open Advantage in Birmingham, and I went and worked full-time there, which then led to going and speaking at conferences, that then led to writing software, that then led to me and other community members, that then led to going and working at Canonical, that then led to doing panels and starting the Community Leadership Summit, and now, last year, launched the Community Leadership Core, which is an accelerator for companies who are focused on building communities or DevRel, and we help them deliver quarterly results regularly. My point here is this isn't unique. It was a 19-year-old kid who was just getting started in this. And this is nothing specific to me. On the other side of the world, in 2006, I was working at Canonical, and I got an email from a kid. He was based in rural Africa, and he told me that he didn't have a computer, and he'd do chores around the village to earn money. And then he'd walked 2 hours to his local internet cafe, spend that money on internet access, he'd contribute to Ubuntu, he'd write documentation, he'd do translations, and then he'd walk 2 hours back. And he sent me an email saying, thank you to everyone at Canonical and the Ubuntu community team. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is you. But he felt empowered. In the same way I was just a working class kid in England, he was just a kid in Africa, and those stories resonate all over the world. To me, that is what's so powerful about this. But to make that happen, to empower the individual, I think you need a couple of things. Access to technology. We broadly have that now with open source. You also need access to education. There's never been a better time to learn with YouTube and blogging and video, all kinds of stuff. And also access to opportunity. And I would argue this is better than ever before, to be able to go out there with an idea, with some time, and to have an impact. But to me, what makes the UK so special is the final missing ingredient here, which I think is genuinely less prevalent in the US than it is over here. And that is the concept of what if. What if we did this? What if we had a go at this? What if we tried this software? What if we built a conference, right? And what I want all of you to do over the next couple of days, as you're finishing off in the plenaries and you're having coffee and tea and you're walking around this venue and all the rest of it, I want everybody to just keep saying what if. Like, what if we tried this? Wouldn't it be cool if we had a go at this? It could be the most insane, ridiculous idea you can imagine. But if you have that sense of what if, the individual is empowered, the group is empowered, and that's how we build open source. Thanks, everyone.